Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Tobias. This channel is where true feeling nightmares come to life. The stories you're about to hear sink in quietly, linger in your thoughts, and follow you into the dark long after the lights go out. Before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories every week. Now get comfortable, lower the lights, and let's get right into tonight's story. This one's going to be called I Still Don't Know What Lived in That House. The first thing you notice about a new house is what it smells like. Not the paint, there wasn't any. Not the new carpet, there wasn't that either. It smelled like someone else, like warm dust that had been breathed in and out for years, like old wood that had learned the shape of other people's footsteps. It should have smelled empty. It didn't. Dad said that was normal. Houses have a smell, he told me when he shouldered a box-marked kitchen and walked backward through the doorway like he was afraid to turn his back on it. Give it a week, you'll forget. Mom laughed the way she did when she wanted to believe something hard enough to make it true. The laughter fluttered up into the tall entryway and died before it reached the second floor railing. The sound didn't echo the way it should have. It was like the house swallowed it. We moved in on a Saturday. The realtor called it a family home, which is code for someone raised kids here, and then something happened. I couldn't say that out loud. Mom had been so excited. The 3-bedroom we'd been renting felt like it shrank around us after my little sister Emma was born. And after Dad's hours got cut, there was no way we could afford something newer. This house was older but bigger, cheaper because it was as is, cheaper because the previous owners relocated suddenly. That was what the realtor said. Relocated suddenly? Dad asked where. The realtor smiled without showing teeth. Out of state. They needed a fresh start. I didn't like the way she said fresh start, like she was scrubbing something off her hands. The neighborhood looked normal enough, bare trees, winter gray lawns, and a line of houses with porch lights already on by late afternoon. Our street ended in the woods. Dad loved that. Quiet, he said, no traffic, safe. I stared at the woods while they carried boxes in. The trees were too close, not like a nice open forest you could walk through. These were packed together like they were guarding something. The wind moved through them, but it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like somebody whispering a secret they didn't want you to hear. Our dog Milo didn't bark when we pulled up. Usually he lost his mind in new places. He just sat between Emma's car seat and my knees and stared at the house with his ears pinned back. His nails clicked on the hardwood when Mom let him out. He sniffed the porch, hesitated at the threshold, and then stepped inside like he was walking into cold water. I tried to make myself feel excited. New room, bigger backyard, a chance for things to be better. But standing in the entryway, watching the hallway yawn open into darker rooms, I had the strangest sensation that we weren't the ones moving in. It felt like the house was moving around us. The first night, we ate pizza on the living room floor because the table was still wrapped in moving blankets. The heat kicked on with a low groan, like the house resented being warmed. Emma fell asleep in Mom's lap, her head heavy and limp like a doll. Dad rubbed his eyes. I'm wiped, he said. Tomorrow we'll get the bed set up. Mom stood carefully with Emma. I'll put her down and then shower. I feel gross. I volunteered to take Milo out before bed. I wanted an excuse to be outside. The sky was clear and hard with stars. The cold air made my nose sting. Milo didn't wander or sniff around. He went to the edge of the yard, peed fast, and tried to drag me back to the door. Okay, I muttered. I get it. You hate it. Back inside, I locked the door shut out of habit. The bolt slid home with a chunk that felt too loud. The house seemed to pause, as if listening. Upstairs, the hallway light flickered on once I passed under it. Just once. A blink. I stopped and looked back. The bulb steadied. I told myself it was old wiring. Dad would fix it. My room was at the end of the hall, facing the woods. I unpacked a few things, phone charger, blankets, my desk lamp. The rest could wait. I lay down on the mattress on the floor and stared up at the ceiling. The ceiling had hairline cracks that spidered away from the light fixture. Old plaster, normal. Except there was one crack that looked purposeful, like a letter. I blinked. Just a crack. I turned my lamp off and the room fell into darkness that didn't feel like darkness. It felt like something pressed close to my face. I heard Mom's shower start in the bathroom across the hall. Water hissed, steam. The sound was comforting in a way, a normal house sound, a normal family sound. A few minutes later, I heard her stop singing mid-note. I sat up, suddenly awake. Mom, I called. There was a pause, then her voice light, Too light. Yeah, honey? You okay? Another pause. Yeah, just. I thought I saw something silly. My stomach tightened. Like what? She laughed once. It didn't sound like earlier. It sounded forced, like she was trying to make the laugh bigger than what she felt. Nothing. Shadows. This bathroom light is weird. The shower kept running. I lay back down, but I couldn't let it go. I listened. The water, the fan, the soft thud of her shampoo bottle being set down. Then the shower curtain rings slid across the rod with a dry whisper. Then, very faint, like a fingertip running across glass. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I sat up again. The sound stopped. I heard the bathroom door open. Mom's footsteps crossed the hall. She knocked gently on my doorframe, as if she wasn't sure she should enter. You awake? She asked. Yeah. She stepped into my room, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping. Her face looked pale, almost gray. What did you see? I asked. She hesitated. She was trying to decide how much truth to give me without scaring me. Mom was good at that. She'd been good at it since Dad started coming home tired and short-tempered after work, since money got tight, since the world got heavier. She tried to smile. It's probably nothing. It's just the mirror fogged up and what? She swallowed. And there were words. My mouth went dry. Words? She nodded once, fast, like something wrote something and the steam brought it out. Like when you write on a mirror and then it disappears until it fogs again. What did it say? Her eyes flickered to the window behind me as if she expected to see something else outside. And then she said very quietly, it said, don't sleep. I stared at her. Mom laughed again, sharper this time, which is honestly rude because I'm exhausted. Mom. She held up a hand. I know it sounds creepy, but it's probably left over from the last family. Teenagers do that, right? Or maybe the mirror's old and has some residue. Residue? Yeah, she forced another smile. Anyways, it wiped right off. Did you wipe it off? Yes. Her voice was immediate, with a towel. And it went away? It did. She nodded like she was convincing herself. See? Nothing. And she didn't look like she believed it. She kissed my forehead and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Lock your window, she said. I always do. Just do it. Then she went back to Emma's room. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't want to look in the mirror and see anything waiting for me in the steam. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, until finally I fell asleep in the early hours when the house had stopped making settling noises and started making quieter ones. Noises that didn't sound like wood. Noises that sounded like breathing. The next morning, Mom acted like it didn't happen. Dad made pancakes on an electric griddle because the stove was finicky. Emma smeared syrup on her cheeks and giggled. Milo lay under the table and watched every movement like he was tracking threats. I asked Mom about the mirror. She gave me a look over Emma's head that said not now, later. Dad noticed Milo. What's wrong with him? He asked. He's just nervous, Mom said quickly. New place. Dad grunted. He'll get over it. That afternoon, Dad went into the basement to check the water heater and look for the circuit breaker. The basement door was in the kitchen. A narrow wooden door with a simple latch like the house didn't want you to make a big deal about going down there. When Dad opened it, a cold draft rolled out. I was carrying a box when I heard him call out. Huh? That's weird. Mom came into the kitchen. What? Dad's voice floated up from the stairs. There's writing down here. Mom and I froze at the same time. What kind of writing? Mom asked, her voice too even. Dad chuckled. Like chalk, on the wall near the bottom step. It must have been the kids. Don't touch it, Mom said. Dad paused. Why? Mom hesitated. She didn't want to say it. Not in front of me. Not in front of the kitchen that might be listening. Just don't, she said. It's probably gross. Dad muttered something under his breath and came back up. He wiped his hands on his jeans like he'd touched something. Fudge. Okay, guys, I forgot to put in the microphone, but we're not restarting. We're just gonna We're just gonna keep it moving, and this will just be one of those things where we just go with it. Oh gosh, I'm so tired today that I just don't feel like doing anything else and restarting this video. So we're gonna start off where we left, and then we're gonna go from there. All right, everything should be good, and you should hear everything a lot more clear. Anyways. My dad muttered something under his breath and came back up. He wiped his hands on his jeans like he touched something sticky, even though he hadn't. It says, "Stay," he announced, trying to make it sound like a joke. Mom's eyes flicked to mine. I asked, "Stay what?" Dad shrugged. "Just stay, like the dog. Maybe they tried to train him down here." Dad snorted. "Creepy place for it." Milo, as if he understood his name had been used in an explanation, stood up and went to the basement door. He sniffed the crack at the bottom, and then he backed away and whined. Mom put her hand on the door and pushed it closed, more firmly than necessary. "We'll clean it later," she said. Dad rolled his eyes. "It's chalk." Mom didn't argue. She just went back to packing her movements tight. That night, Mom showered again. This time, she left the bathroom door open like she didn't want to be alone with a mirror. I stood in the hallway, pretending to organize boxes, listening. The shower hissed. Steam built. Then I heard it again. Squeak, 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 like a finger writing on glass. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. "Mom," I called, stepping forward. The writing stopped immediately. Mom peeked out, shampoo in her hair. "What?" Did you hear that?" She stared at me for a half a second, and I saw the truth on her face. She'd heard it too. "It's probably the vent," she said. "The fan." But her voice shook. When she finished, she refused to look at the mirror. She kept her eyes on the tile and wiped the glass with a towel like she was erasing a crime scene. I didn't go in there. Later, when the house was quiet, I couldn't sleep. The words "don't sleep" kept looming in my head like a song you can't stop hearing. I got up and crept into the hallway. Emma's room was dark. Mom and Dad's room door was cracked. I could hear Dad snoring lightly. Mom's breathing uneven like she wasn't asleep. I padded to the bathroom. The door was half open. The mirror looked normal, but the room smelled faintly like damp metal, like pennies. I held my breath and reached for the faucet. I turned on hot water. Steam rose slowly, fogging the mirror from the bottom up like a curtain lifting. My chest felt tight. The fog thickened. Then, as if someone was tracing letters from the inside of the glass, words appeared, perfectly clear where the steam refused to cling. "We see you." I stumbled backwards, my heel hitting the doorframe. The faucet kept running. The words didn't fade. They sat there in the fog like they'd always been part of the mirror, like the mirror had simply been waiting for the right conditions to reveal them. And then another line appeared beneath it, not formed slowly, not written, just there. "You're home." I slammed the faucet off so hard my knuckles hurt. The steam began to thin, but the words stayed longer than they should have. They clung as if the mirror didn't want to let them go. I ran back to my room and I locked the door, which was ridiculous because doors in a house don't mean much if the thing you're afraid of is inside. I lay in the bed with my eyes open until dawn, and in the moments when I almost drifted off, I swear I felt the mattress dip slightly, like someone kneeling beside me to whisper something I wasn't allowed to hear. The first bad thing happened on the third day. Dad was carrying a laundry basket down the stairs. I heard him before I saw him, his footsteps, the plastic basket thumping against his hip. Mom was in the living room folding clothes. I was on the floor building a block tower for Emma, trying to be normal. Dad stepped onto the staircase and started down. Halfway, there was a sound like a shoe slipping. Then Dad made a noise, more surprised than pained, and then something heavy hit the steps and rolled. Thud, thud, thud. The basket bounced, clothes flew. Dad hit the bottom landing and lay there stunned. Mom screamed his name. I jumped up. Emma started crying. Milo barked once, sharp and terrified, and then ran in circles. Dad pushed himself up on his elbows, his face white. "What happened?" Mom demanded, already kneeling beside him, hand hovering, like she was afraid to touch him wrong and break him more. Dad blinked rapidly. I don't know." He looked up the stairs like he expected to see a loose board or a toy. There was nothing. He swallowed. "I felt like something shoved me." Mom froze. I froze. Dad tried to laugh, but the sound came out wrong. Probably just missed a step. You didn't, I said. My voice sounded small. Dad's eyes snapped to mine, and there was a warning there. A silent, don't start this, not in front of your mother, not in front of your sister. Mom helped him up. He was limping, but he insisted he was fine. It's a steep staircase, he said loudly, like this house needed to hear him. Blamed the architecture. Old house. We'll put a runner on it. Mom nodded too quickly. Yes, we should. I watched their faces. They were scared. Not scared of the stairs, scared of what Dad had said. Something shoved me. That night, Dad took ibuprofen and went to bed early. Mom stayed up cleaning even though the house was already clean. She wiped counters that were already spotless. She checked locks twice. She stared at corners like she expected them to twitch. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence, a slip. A misstep, but deep down, I knew that the house had heard us talking. It had heard Mom mention the mirror. It had heard Dad talk about the chalk writing. It had watched us move in like we were food being carried into a cage. And now it was wanting to let us know that it could touch us. On the fifth morning, Mom went to make coffee. Dad was still sore, but insisted on going to work. We can't afford me calling out, he said. He kissed Mom quickly and left, his face tight. Mom tried to smile at me. Coffee will make everything feel normal. I sat at the kitchen table with Emma in her high chair. Milo lay under my feet, his body pressed against my ankles, like he needed contact to believe he was safe. Mom filled the coffee maker. I watched her hand shake slightly as she scooped grounds. She pressed the button. The machine started to gurgle. Then, without warning, the glass pot exploded. Not cracked, not shattered from a drop. Exploded, like something inside it punched outwards. Shards flew across the counter. Hot water splashed. Coffee grounds scattered like dirt. Mom screamed and jerked back. A shard sliced her forearm. Blood welled up immediately. Emma wailed. Milo lunged forward, barking. The barking was frantic, like he was trying to fight the air. Mom clutched her arm. What the? I stared at the coffee maker. Steam rose from the puddle of hot water. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, bitter and burn. On the backsplash behind the coffee maker and the condensation clinging to the tile, there were letters. Not steam writing like the mirror. Wet letters, darker than the surrounding tile, as if somebody had traced them with a soaked finger. No comfort. Mom saw it. I watched her eyes fixed on the words. The color drained from her face. She backed away from the counter like it might bite her. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. Get a towel, Mom whispered. Get your sister. Her voice was not a mom voice. It was the voice of someone whose world had tilted and didn't know how to write it. I grabbed Emma from the high chair, her little fist clenched. I carried her to the living room and set her on the couch with her stuffed rabbit. Mom followed, pressing a dish towel to her arm. Milo didn't follow. He stood in the kitchen doorway staring at the kitchen like he saw something we didn't. His ears were flattened, his tail tucked tight, his body trembled. Then he growled. Low, a sound I'd never heard from him before. Mom looked over my shoulder. Milo, she said softly, come here. He didn't move. He stared harder. And then, as if something invisible yanked him, he suddenly lunged forward into the kitchen, towards the basement door, and disappeared out of sight. I heard his nails scrabble on hardwood. I heard the basement latch click. Then I heard nothing. Milo? I called, my voice cracking. Mom rushed to the kitchen, slipping slightly in the water. She grabbed the basement door handle and yanked. It didn't open. She pulled again. It was like someone was holding it shut from the other side. Her breath came in short bursts. It's stuck, she said. I set Emma down and ran to help, grabbing the handle too. We pulled together. The door didn't budge. From behind it, there was a sound. Not a bark, not a whine. A single sharp yelp, cut off like someone clapped a hand over his mouth. Mom let go of the handle like it burned her. For a second, I swear I smelled the same damp metal smell as the bathroom. Then the smell changed. It smelled like wet soil, like a grave after rain. Mom backed away, hand over her mouth. Tears brimmed in her eyes. We have to get Dad, she whispered. I nodded, already shaking. We have to call him. Mom grabbed her phone with trembling fingers, and then her phone screen went black. Not dead because it had been fully charged, just black. She pressed the power button. Nothing. She looked at mine. Yours. Call him. I pulled my phone out. No service. The little bars that should have been there, they were gone. And in the corner where it would have usually said the carrier, it says something else. A single word. Stay. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Mom saw over my shoulder and made it sound like she'd been punched. The house wasn't just scaring us, it was keeping us. We spent the rest of that day trying to convince ourselves that we were being irrational. Mom cleaned up the glass with thick oven mitts like she didn't trust her skin anymore. She wrapped her arms. She repeated, "It was pressure. It was hot. It was old," like a prayer. But she kept glancing at the basement door. The door didn't open. We tried a butter knife in the latch. It didn't work. We tried shoulder checking it. It didn't even rattle. Dad came home after work and found Mom sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the basement door like it was a coffin. He looked at her arm. "What happened?" Mom tried to speak. Her mouth opened and no sound came out. She looked at me. So I told him. I told him about the coffee pot, about the words on the tile, about the basement door, and about Milo. Dad's face hardened. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to yell at me for saying it out loud. And then he walked to the basement door and grabbed the handle. He yanked. Nothing. He yanked harder. The muscles in his forearms bulged, his jaw clenched. Still nothing. He stepped back and kicked the door. The door didn't move. Dad stared at it. I watched the confidence leak out of his posture in slow motion. He leaned close, put his ear against the wood. "Milo?" he called. Silence. Dad swallowed. This is crazy. Mom's voice came out in a whisper. "The mirror," she said. "The writing. It's not." Dad held up his hand. No, we're not doing this. We're not turning this into some horror movie." Mom flinched. Dad looked at Emma, who was playing quietly on the living room rug, unaware that her dog was missing and her parents were breaking inside. Dad rubbed his face. "We're gonna get him out," he said, voice rough. "I'll call someone. A locksmith. I don't know. I'll call someone." He pulled his phone out. His screen went black the moment it left his pocket. Dad stared at it like it betrayed him. He pressed the power button. Nothing. Mom held hers up. "Same." Dad looked at me. "Your phone." I showed him. No service. The word "stay" still sat in the corner like a stain. Dad's throat worked. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay." "Landline." "Neighbor." Mom shook her head. "We don't have a landline." Dad grabbed his keys. "Then I'm going to the neighbor." He stepped towards the front door. The front door knob turned by itself. Not fully, just enough to click like someone testing it. Dad froze. The knob turned again. Click. And then the deadbolt slid, slowly, deliberately into place. Dad didn't move. Neither did Mom. Emma looked up confused, rabbit in her arms. Dad walked to the door and tried to unlock it. The bolt wouldn't turn. He tried the knob. It didn't open. He slammed his shoulder into it. The door didn't budge. The house wasn't just keeping Milo. It was keeping us. That night, we heard something in the walls. Scratching. Soft at first, like mice, then heavier like fingernails dragging across wood. Emma cried. Mom held her and rocked her, whispering hymns under her breath like she could pray the house into behaving. Dad searched every corner and every room with a flashlight. He checked windows, locks, vents. He opened closets like he expected to find something hiding. He didn't check the basement. He couldn't. The basement door sat there quiet. Too quiet, like it knew it didn't need to move. Sometime after midnight, I went to the bathroom because fear doesn't stop your body from needing things. I kept my eyes off the mirror while I peed. I washed my hands and stared at the faucet. The mirror fogged slightly from the warm water. I tried not to look. But the human brain is stupid. It wanted to see this thing that it knows will hurt it. So I looked. The mirror wasn't fully fogged, just a thin haze around the edges. And in that haze, a message that had already formed. It wasn't "don't sleep this time." It was longer. It filled the glass like a sentence written by someone patient. "We took the dog first." I staggered back, my mouth opening in a silent scream. The letters shifted like a living thing rearranging. The sentence changed. "We take what you love." And then one more line appeared, slow and careful, as if carved. One by one. I slammed the bathroom door and ran down the hall. Mom sat up in bed instantly like she hadn't been sleeping. "What?" she whispered. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head and held my hands out like they were empty. Dad sat up too, eyes sharp. "What happened?" I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "The mirror," I rasped. It said it took Milo." Mom made a broken sound and buried her face in her hands. Dad swung his legs out of bed. No, he said, voice low. No, that's no. He marched to the bathroom like anger could overpower fear. I followed because I couldn't let him be alone with it. Mom followed too, clutching Emma, who whimpered as if she sensed the panic. Dad yanked the bathroom door open and flipped the light on. The mirror was clear now, no fog, no words. Dad stared at it, breathing hard, and then he slammed his fist into the glass. The mirror cracked in a spiderweb pattern. Mom screamed. Emma cried. Dad stood there, fist bleeding, panting like he'd just fought someone. See, he said hoarsely, staring at the cracked mirror like he'd won. It's just a mirror. It's just... The bathroom light flickered. Once. Twice. And then it went out. In the dark, the cracked mirror gleamed faintly, reflecting moonlight from the small frosted window. And in those cracks and the way the broken glass caught light, I saw shapes. Letters. Not fog, not condensation. The cracks themselves formed words. Can't break us. Dad backed away slowly, his bloodied hand held out like it wasn't his. Mom whispered, "Oh my God." Emma's cries turned into high panicked shrieks. Dad turned and ran to the hallway light switch. He flipped it. Nothing. He flipped it again. Still nothing. The house had gone dark. And then from somewhere below us, from the direction of the basement, we heard something we hadn't heard since the morning Milo vanished. A sound like nails on wood, scrabbling, and then a heavy thump, and then another. Then like something climbing the stairs, but not like a dog, like something with weight and patience. Dad grabbed Mom's arm. "Get the kids," he hissed. Get them downstairs. We're leaving." Mom laughed once, hysterical. "The door." "We'll go out a window," Dad snapped. We stumbled down the hallway in darkness, guided only by the faint glow of streetlight through windows. The air felt cooler. The wall seemed closer. Halfway down the stairs, Dad stopped. He stared at the wall beside the staircase. I followed his gaze. There were smears on the wallpaper. Dark, wet. At first, my brain tried to make it seem like it was something normal. Mud. Coffee, then the smell hit. Coppery, warm, blood. And in those smears, streaks as if someone had dragged their hands across the wall. There were letters, not written neatly, written like warnings, scratched by something that didn't care about legibility. Stay. Dad's throat bobbed. Mom covered Emma's eyes without thinking. I couldn't look away. Another line appeared below, slowly spreading as if the blood was seeping into the paper in the shape of words. Or fall. Dad's eyes widened, and then the air behind us shifted. Not wind, presence. Like a crowd suddenly standing close. Dad spun around, gripping the banister. Nothing was there, but I felt it. I felt something watching from the top of the steps, waiting. Dad moved first. "Go," he said, voice shaking. "Go now." We ran. The living room was a dim rectangle of shadow. The front windows showed the porch light outside, still on, still normal, as if the world hadn't noticed our house was turning into a trap. Dad headed for the front door anyways. He tried the lock again, harder, like he expected to yield to desperation. It didn't. Mom rushed to the kitchen window. She tugged at it. It opened an inch and stopped like it hit a block. Dad tried the dining room window. Same. Every window moved just enough to tease us, to give us hope, and then stopped, like the house was letting us know it controlled the boundaries. Emma cried harder, her little body trembling in Mom's arms. Dad clenched his teeth. "Basement?" he said suddenly. Mom stared. "What? If there's any way out, old houses sometimes have, like, storm doors," Dad said, words tumbling, "or a bulkhead weakened." Mom looked at the basement door. It sat there in the kitchen. Silent, patient. Dad grabbed a flashlight from the junk drawer and marched towards it. Mom whispered, "Don't." Dad didn't listen. He put his hand on the latch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the latch lifted easily. The basement door swung open. Cold air poured out like a breath. Mom gasped. "It's open." Dad hesitated on the top step. He shone the flashlight beam down. The basement steps descended into darkness. The concrete walls were damp. The air smelled like wet earth. Dad called, "Milo?" His voice echoed wrong, like it was being swallowed. From below, a sound came up. A whine. Faint. Pitiful. "Milo," Mom cried. Emma reached out with both hands, sobbing. "Doggy, doggy." Dad took a step down, and then another. Mom followed, despite herself, clutching Emma. I followed because I couldn't let my family split in a house that had already taken our dog. The basement was colder than it should have been. The flashlight beam caught shelves, boxes, pipes, a furnace that looked like it belonged in a museum. In the far corner, there was a door that I hadn't noticed before. An exterior door, metal, with a small window. Dad's breath hitched. There, he whispered. There's the way out. He walked towards it. The beam of flashlight swept across the wall beside the stairs. The chalk writing Dad had mentioned, but it wasn't chalk anymore. It was darker. It looked damp. It said stay. But now the letters were thick and uneven like they'd been traced over with something wet. Dad ignored it and went for the door. He grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't open. He pulled again, harder. The handle didn't budge. Dad slammed his shoulder into it. The metal door boomed, the sound vibrating through my bones. It didn't open. Dad turned breath ragged. Okay, he said, voice cracking. Okay, fine. We'll be fine. The flashlight flickered. Once, twice. Then it steadied, and the beam shifted slightly as if the light itself was being pushed. It shone into the corner, and something moved there. Not a rat, not a shadow. Something low and hunched, pressed against the wall like it had been waiting in the dark. Dad's beam caught fur. Milo. He was there, except his body was rigid. His eyes were wide and glassy, reflecting the flashlight like marbles. His mouth was open, lips pulled back from his teeth. He wasn't breathing. Mom made it sound like she'd been stabbed. Emma screamed. Dad stumbled forward. No, buddy. Milo's body twitched. Just once, like a puppet being tugged. Then his head turned slowly towards us. Too slowly. Not like an animal turning, like something rotating him. Dad froze. The basement air thickened, and the cold turned things sharp. And then Milo's mouth moved. Not barking, not whining. The jaw opened wider than it should have, and a voice came out. Not Milo's, not even a voice that belonged in a throat. It was layered like several people speaking at once from deep underwater. Home, it said. Mom backed up, nearly dropping Emma. Dad whispered, what the hell? Milo's head tilted. The movement was wrong, the angle too steep. Then the voice spoke again. You brought her in. The flashlight beam shook in Dad's hands. Mom clutched Emma and whispered, Who? The basement's lights flickered on. We hadn't turned them on. The single bare bulb overhead buzzed weakly, casting sickly yellowed light. The walls. My stomach turned. The concrete walls were covered in writing. Not just stay, not just a word, whole sentences, names, dates, some written in chalk, some scratched into concrete like some smeared in dark stains, and over in different handwriting, like desperate people had carved it before they lost the chance. It won't let you leave. Don't sleep. Burn it. It lives in the glass. Don't look. Dad's flashlight swung wildly. The beam caught one line written bigger than the rest, smeared in something that looked like old blood. The house wants a family. Mom's knees buckled. She caught herself on a shelf. Dad backed away from Milo, from whatever was using Milo, and grabbed Mom's elbow. Up, he whispered, up now. Milo's mouth opened again. The layered voice spoke, amused. Up or down? It's all ours. And then Milo's body lurched forward on stiff legs. Not running, not walking, dragging, coming towards us. Dad grabbed Mom and shoved her towards the stairs. Go. We scrambled up the basement steps. My foot slipped onto something wet. I didn't look down. I didn't want to know. Behind us, the basement door slammed shut on its own with a final satisfied thunk. We hit the kitchen gasping, sobbing, shaking. Dad tried the basement latch. It was locked again. Mom clutched Emma so tightly, Emma squealed. Dad looked around like a trapped animal. The walls were quiet, too quiet. And then from upstairs, from the hallway, came a slow, soft sound. Squeak, 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 like a finger writing. Not on the mirror this time, on something else. Dad whispered, It's in the walls. Mom choked out. It's everywhere. The house creaked above us like it was shifting its weight, and then something thudded on the stairs. A single step, and then another. Heavy, slow, like someone or something was coming down. Dad grabbed a kitchen knife from the block. The blade looked pathetic in his hand. A tiny piece of metal against the house that could lock doors and speak through dead dogs. Mom backed towards the living room, whispering, We have to get out. We have to. The front door deadbolt clicked. Then very softly, as if right behind our ears, a whisper filled the air. Not from any one direction, from the walls themselves. Move out, it hissed, not mocking. And then, after a pause that felt like the house leaning in close to savor our fear, or die here. We didn't sleep after that. We sat in the living room with every light on until the lights started flickering like candles in wind. Dad kept a knife on his knee. Mom held Emma, and I held a fireplace poker like it made me strong instead of ridiculous. The writing started appearing everywhere, not all at once, little at a time. Like the house enjoyed pacing itself. On the living room wall above the family photo we propped on the mantel, a dark smear appeared and spread into letters. She's ours. Mom tore the photo down and threw it in a box like it was contaminated. On the kitchen cabinets, dark fingerprints bloomed in the shape of words. Feed us fear. Dad wiped them with bleach. The letters smeared but didn't disappear. The bleach just made the stain lighter, like old bruises. In Emma's room, on the pastel painted wall, a handprint appeared. Too large to be a child's and dragged downwards, leaving streaks that formed a single line. Next. Mom closed Emma's door and wouldn't open it again. The mirror in the bathroom cracked farther on its own. Tiny slivers fell into the sink like teeth. Dad tried to call for help by walking outside. He couldn't open the door. He tried to smash the window. The glass didn't break. His fist hit it and bounced back, and the glass made a sound like laughter. The house was sealed, and it was patient. It didn't try to kill us all at once. It hurt us in pieces, like it wanted us to understand. The next day, Dad went down the stairs carefully, gripping the railing. Halfway, his foot stopped as if something grabbed it. He jerked. His body pitched forward. He would have fallen again. He would have snapped his neck this time if I hadn't grabbed his shirt. The force that pulled him was strong enough to grab both of us. Dad screamed. Mom grabbed my arm. Together, we yanked him back. When Dad collapsed at the top of the steps panting, there were red marks around his ankle. Finger marks. 5. Deep. Bruising instantly. Dad stared at his ankle like it was proof of insanity made real. Mom whispered, "It wants to." Dad cut her off, voice raw. "I know what it wants." He looked around the house, eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness. "It wants us to leave, and it won't let us." I whispered. Dad's face twisted. He slammed his fist against the wall. The wall answered. A dark red line seeped out of the paint like a vein opening. Words formed slowly. "Leave the baby." Mom screamed and clutched Emma tighter. Dad stared at the words. Then he did something that chilled me more than anything else. He nodded, not agreeing, understanding, like he'd finally accepted the rules of a game he never wanted to play. "Fine," he whispered, voice shaken with rage. "Fine, you want us gone? You're going to let us out." He stumbled to the kitchen and grabbed the toolbox. He pulled out a hammer. Mom cried. "What are you doing?" Dad's eyes were wild. "I'm tearing it apart." He said, "If it lives in the house, I'll..." He swung the hammer into the wall. The plaster cracked. Dust fell. The impact echoed. Dad swung again. The crack widened. And then the wall bled. A thick, dark ooze seeped from the fracture, dripping down like syrup. Not bright red, not fresh, old, black red. The smell hit us, copper and rot. Dad froze, hammer midair. The ooze formed a line and then another, until it looked like letters being written by liquid itself. "You can't fix us." Dad backed away, hammer slipping from his hand. The hammer hit the floor with a metallic clang, and then the house made a sound. Not a creak, not a groan, a slow vibrating hum like a giant's throat clearing. The lights dim. The air pressure shifted, making my ears pop. Emma started crying so hard she gagged, and from somewhere above us, from upstairs, came a sudden crash, like furniture being thrown. Mom screamed and ran towards the stairs. Dad grabbed her. "No, don't go up." But Mom wrenched free, wild with maternal panic. "Emma's room," she sobbed. She ran upstairs anyways. I followed because I couldn't leave her. Dad followed, cursing. We reached the top of the stairs and saw Emma's door closed, but the door frame looked wrong. The wood around it bulged slightly, like something on the other side was pressing outwards. Mom grabbed the knob and tried to open it. It didn't turn. Dad shoved her aside and tried it himself. No. And then the door shuddered. A slow, heavy thump from inside, and then another, as if something was walking in there. Mom began screaming Emma's name even though Emma was in her arms. She wasn't thinking. None of us were. Dad slammed his shoulder into the door. The door held. And then a sound came from the other side. A soft whisper in Emma's voice. "Mama?" Mom went rigid. Emma in her arms hiccuped mid-cry, confused. Dad's face drained to colors. The whisper came again. Mama, open the door. She shook her head violently like she couldn't shake the sound out of her ears. That's not her, I whispered, tears streaming. That's not. The whisper turned into a giggle, a baby giggle, but wrong, stretched. When the voice layered like basement voice, like multiple throats pretending to be one. Give her to us. The wallpaper beside the door darkened. Words appeared, smeared as if written with wet fingers. Trade. Dad grabbed Mom and dragged her back down the hall. Mom fought him, sobbing, trying to reach the door that wouldn't open. Emma screamed. I stumbled after them, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Back downstairs, Dad slammed the hall closet door open and shoved us inside. Mom, Emma, me. Like the closet was a bunker. He shut the door too. We sat in darkness. Mom shaking, Emma crying, my breath loud in my ears. Through the thin wood, we heard the house. Footsteps upstairs, slow and heavy, a dragging sound. Then from the bathroom, the mirror cracking again like little pop. It was little pops like ice breaking. Mom whispered into the dark. We can't stay. I whispered back. It won't let us leave. Dad's voice came through the door, slow and desperate. Then we make it. Something thudded against the closet door. Once, like a knuckle tapping, and then slow and deliberate, scratching started. Letters being carved right on the closet door. I could see faint lines in the dark, hear the grain of the wood protesting. Mom held her breath. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then Dad spoke. Voice shaking so hard I barely recognized it. It's writing, he whispered. What? Mom croaked. Dad's voice cracked. On the door it says, a pause. Then barely audible. Move out. Then another line scraped as if added for emphasis. Dad finished reading and his voice dropped to a whisper full of dread. Before midnight. We didn't have a plan. We had panic and exhaustion and a house that had decided to set deadline. Dad stuffed essentials into a duffel. Diapers, wipes, a couple changes of clothes, Dad's wallet, Mom's purse. He grabbed the car keys like they were a holy object. We tried the front door again. The lock wouldn't turn. Dad tried the back door. Same. He tried the windows. They opened a crack and then stopped. The house was a fist around us. Dad stared at the fireplace. Chimney, he whispered. Mom's eyes widened. What? Dad swallowed. If it's open, if we can get... He didn't finish because we all pictured it, climbing through the soot and brick with a baby, dropping into the cold outside like we were escaping a burning building. Dad started pulling at the fireplace screen. It rattled loudly. The house responded immediately. The living room lights flickered violently. The TV unplugged, flashed on. A snowstorm of static filled the screen, and then through the static, a shape formed. A face. Not clear enough to identify, but unmistakably human in outline. The mouth moved. No sound at first. Then the TV speakers crackled and a whisper slithered out. Midnight. Mom backed away, clutching Emma. Dad ripped the TV plug from the wall and threw it across the room. The screen went black, but the whisper continued. Not from the TV, from the walls, from the air. Midnight, midnight, midnight. I covered my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't something you could block. It was inside the house, and the house was around us, and the house was in us because we were breathing its air. Dad ran to the garage door. He hit the button. The motor whined. The door lifted a few inches, then slammed shut so hard the whole house shook. Dad punched the wall, swearing. Mom started crying openly. We're going to die here, she whispered. No, Dad said, voice hoarse. No, we're not. He looked at the hallway mirror by the stairs, a decorative mirror we hadn't even noticed until now, reflecting the living room. The three of us, and behind us, nothing, except a reflection seemed deeper than it should be, like the mirror wasn't reflecting our house, like it was reflecting somewhere else. Dad stepped towards it. Dad, don't, I whispered. Dad stared into his own reflection. His eyes looked sunken and wild. He reached out and touched the mirror's surface. His fingertip left a smear. The glass felt warm. Dad's breath hitched. And in the mirror, not in the mirror, in it, something moved behind his reflection. A shadow sliding close. Dad jerked his hand back. On the mirror surface, where his finger had touched, letters appeared, like the glass had been waiting for his skin to activate it. Glass as a door. Dad stared at it, chest heaving. Mom whispered, "What does that mean?" Dad looked around frantically. Bathroom mirror, hallway mirror, Emma's dresser mirror. Mirrors everywhere, in every room. Mom had wanted them for light, for space. Now they felt like eyes. Dad's voice dropped. "It lives in the mirrors," he whispered, remembering the basement warning. "It lives in the glass." I felt sick. Dad grabbed a hammer again. He went to the hallway mirror and swung. The mirror shattered in an explosion of shards. The house screamed. Not a human scream. A vibration that made my teeth ache, like the walls themselves were shrieking. A light went out completely. In the dark, the shards on the floor reflected tiny pieces of moonlight like scattered eyes. Dad swung again, smashing the frame, crushing shards. He moved room to room like a man possessed. Bathroom, bedroom, living room, smashing every mirror he could find. Each smash brought the house's scream back, rising in pitch. Each smash made the air colder. Mom sobbed, "Stop, stop." But Dad kept going. He found Emma's dresser mirror and hesitated. Emma's wide eyes stared at him over Mom's shoulder. Dad swallowed and smashed it anyways. The scream peaked, then stopped abruptly, like a throat cut off. Silence. A deep silence that pressed on us. Dad stood in the living room panting, surrounded by glittering shards. Mom whispered, "Did it work?" Dad stared at the front door. He stepped to it, hand trembling. He grabbed the deadbolt. He turned it. It moved. Clicked. Unlocked. Dad's eyes filled with tears. He threw the door open. Cold night air rushed in like freedom. We didn't hesitate. Dad grabbed the duffel. Mom clutched Emma. I stumbled after them barefoot, not caring about the cold, not caring about the glass shards in the hallway. We ran onto the porch. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. The neighborhood was quiet, normal. Porch lights, distant TV glowed through the windows. Our house behind us was dark, except for one upstairs window, the bathroom window. A pale glow. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, breath tearing in my chest, and looked back. In the bathroom window, the broken bathroom mirror was visible through the glass, reflecting moonlight. And on that broken mirror, despite Dad smashing it, despite shards, despite cracks, words glowed faintly like frost. "You can move out." A pause, and then another line appeared beneath it. "But you'll bring us." Mom yanked my arm. "Don't look." I tore my eyes away and ran after them. We sprinted to the car in the driveway. Dad fumbled with keys, hands shaking so badly he dropped them once. He scooped them up and jammed them into the ignition. The engine turned over. For a terrifying second, it sputtered, and then it roared to life. Dad slammed it into reverse. The headlights swept across the front of the house, and in that sweep, I saw it, just for a second in the upstairs window. Not a person, not a shape, a cluster of faces pressed against the glass from inside, layered and warped, like reflections stacked wrong. Their mouths moved in perfect unison. I couldn't hear them over the engine, but I knew what they were saying. Dad backed out fast, tires spinning gravel. We shot down the street. The house disappeared behind trees. The woods at the end of the road swallowed it. Mom sobbed in Emma's hair. Dad drove like he was fleeing a wildfire. I sat in the back shaking, staring at my reflection in the dark car window. And then as we passed under a street light, the glass briefly caught the light. Just enough for me to see it. A faint smear on the inside of the window. Letters, like a breath on glass. Like steam. Home. I sucked in a sharp breath and wiped it away with my sleeve. The word smeared but didn't vanish. It clung, like it was under the glass, not in it. Dad didn't notice. Mom was too busy holding Emma and crying. I stared at that smeared word until my eyes burned, because in that moment, I understood the most horrifying part. The house didn't want to kill us. Not yet. It wanted to move in with us. It wanted a family. It didn't care what walls held it. It lived in glass, and glass was everywhere. The rearview mirror, the side mirrors, the windows, my phone screen, Mom's phone screen, Dad's watch face. Every reflective surface we carried with us like normal life. I swallowed bile and whispered so quietly no one could hear. We're never safe. Dad kept driving into the dark, the streetlights flickering past like blinking eyes. And behind us, in the direction of that quiet street, and the woods and the house that wasn't empty, the night felt heavier, like something had stood up, like something had smiled, like something had followed. And that's where we'll stop tonight. If this story stayed with you, if it followed you a little too closely, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. If you enjoyed listening, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. New stories are waiting, some already written, some still finding their way out of the dark. Write a comment if you want to share your thoughts or if you've experienced something you still can't explain. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep your doors locked, and try to get some sleep.